So veterans are very frequently writing in to us about how to prepare for their first VR&E meeting. And not just that one, but like pretty much any other VR&E meeting a person may have, but definitely the first meeting. So if you're wondering how to get ready, get geared up for your very first Veteran Readiness and Employment meeting, then you've come to the right spot. Hi, my name is Benjamin Krause. I am a VA-accredited attorney. Disabled veteran, like probably anyone else that's watching this particular video, and have been through the Ringer School to Hard Knocks when it comes to this particular program, and became an attorney. And VA also paid for part of my law practice and my undergrad and all these great things. I was really blessed and have turned that into this particular platform you happen to be watching here, where today we're going to be talking about how to get ready for your very first VR&E meeting. And not just that, but pretty much any other meeting you may have with your vocational rehabilitation counselor. So if you're new to this channel, it's been around for a while. I created this back in, I think it was 2009, and now we have over 41,000 members. I'm assuming they're disabled veterans, but one never knows. And also a lot of veterans and other people throughout the universe here. And we talk about veteran readiness and employment, formerly vocational rehabilitation and employment, on this channel. I try to tune in every Friday. So today we're going to talk about your very first veteran readiness and employment appointment and how to get geared up for that. Also going to talk about, like I said before, any other time that you may come to VR&E and need particular help, because there is a system that I usually follow, that I tell my clients to follow before they go to their particular appointment. And I want to make sure that that you all, I'm typing into my group here, Facebook group. There we go, VR&E. All right. So having said that, we're going to talk about a lot of the different nuances that I tell people, to gear up for, not only from the first meeting, which is, pretty darn important, because most veterans, if they do get denied right there, but also subsequent meetings. So I'm going to talk about meeting types. We're going to talk about how to prepare for those, and answer any questions that I'm able to answer, at least while we're talking. So if you happen to be, again, unfamiliar with me, you can read about what I do and how I do it here below, in, like, if you're on YouTube or if you're in Facebook, I have links to my other work below so that you can check it out, learn a little bit more about my background. And I encourage anybody, of course, watching this, and anyone familiar with YouTube or anything else, make sure that you check out my background, my bona fides. Anybody that you're taking feedback from or getting educational material from, like this, definitely make sure that they have the credentials and the training to verify that they know what they're talking about, because there's nothing worse than getting denied because you followed somebody else's feedback, and that feedback was from basically what we call an armchair or a barracks attorney, which is not an attorney at all, but somebody who likes to play one on TV. I am a bona fide attorney, and am here in Minnesota. I am VA accredited. I'm a member of the Minnesota State Bar, and also admitted to a multitude of other courts throughout the country. And this is what I do for a living. So I receive continuing education all the time about legal matters, including veterans law, and addressing stuff like that. If you have a question, I'm happy to, again, do my best to answer those at the end. So put your question in the comments section. And having said that, we're going to jump into it. So when you're going in for your first meeting, very important. Make sure that you are going into the meeting knowing exactly what you're doing. That doesn't necessarily mean that you know exactly what your vocational goal is or something like that, but there's some underlying things that you must do when you go into your first meeting to make sure that it goes well. I'm going to start with the information that VRE is really looking for, and then we're going to jump into making sure that you show up prepared. Now, we're not going to cover everything here because there's not nearly enough time. The Veteran Readiness and Employment program is rather complicated, and I'm sure if you've looked on Reddit or YouTube or other places, you've probably figured out that the program, some people have great experiences with it and others not so much. So it just kind of is what it is. So we're going to cover the essentials, the high level things, and answer any questions you may have. So when you go into your first meeting, basically what that usually means is you have submitted an application. It means that the Department of Veterans Affairs has evaluated the written record about your background and determined that you are at least eligible for benefits. That doesn't mean entitled. Eligible is a little bit different. Eligible is generally looking at whether you have a disability and some of the other real super basics in the system. Then from there, if you're eligible, you will then at least get your first appointment. For a lot of veterans, that's as far as it goes. They don't make it past the first appointment. Very frequently, we see that veterans are, I'm an attorney, right? So I'm always getting cases where veterans are wrongly denied. So that's what I see all the time. But veterans are frequently denied there. Sometimes the denials are correct, and sometimes there's not. And that's why God invented attorneys, I guess, and veteran service officers and other folks to, help out and to hopefully help a veteran get going in the right direction, because there's nothing worse than having a veteran that otherwise should and desperately needs these benefits get wrongly denied. So when you're going in for that first meeting, it means you're already eligible. So that means you're moving in the direction of a hopeful entitlement. Usually what happens, but not always, is the responsible office, so it's usually a regional office, will send you a packet, like an email with some general information about the program and what you should fill out and come to with that first meeting. Probably the most important document that you're going to receive is going to be the questionnaire. So the questionnaire is VA Form 28-1902W. Many veterans in error blow off this form and they don't fill it out properly. It is in your best interest to spend an inordinate amount of time on this form because you want to make sure that this is your shot, really, to present the VA in this context with evidence using their form in a way that their system is built to interpret, okay? You can send them other forms of documents, and that's fine. Frequently, a VRC will not look at that additional stuff, or if they do, they may not address it within a decision letter, especially a decision letter that's adverse. And that's why it's important to do the best that you can to fill out as accurately and thoroughly as possible the documents that the VA sends you. Usually what I see, or frequently what we see, is a veteran will get a questionnaire, and they may also get what is called labor market information, or LMI packet, or LMA, it depends on the acronym, but usually I see it labeled as LMI. And so what they're looking for is labor market information. This is going to be generalized information about your particular direction you may want to go. Now, this can come after an assessment and an entitlement determination, and generally I hope that that's where the veteran receives this packet. But there may be some instances where you receive it on the front end. So just be aware, it could happen. Be very careful to fill that out also as thoroughly as possible. But I'll cover that after this first appointment part. I just want to point out that sometimes you might get this out of order, might come earlier. But the biggest, most important thing that you can receive and fill out properly is this questionnaire. Now, in the questionnaire, the parts that are important to fill out very thoroughly, and where I see a lot of denials, is in the second part or third part of the form. So toward the end of the form, you want to obviously do as thorough a job as possible addressing everything else. But toward the bottom of the form is going to be the all-important discussion of your disabilities. And so they're going to want you to list them out. Then they're going to want you to explain how they affect you in a day-to-day basis. So that's going to be basically at work. So they want to know how your service-connected disabilities affect work. And there's certain things that they select, such as work performance, work relationships, coworker relationships. I want to say there's about 6. And then there's other. So what I'd encourage a lot of veterans to do is obviously select, when you come to this part, select whatever you feel is relevant. And if you haven't worked between the military and filling out the form, I would encourage you to at least apply to the best of your ability what you think is relevant, right? Again, you're not an attorney, you're not a vocational counselor. You may want to just hit other and then attach a document to this form and then explain how you think it affects you in relation to work. So just want to point that out. There's always an other, or that kind of an option. A lot of veterans will take that opportunity to be more thorough. But I will tell you, when it comes to appealing any wrongful denial, the more information you can provide the vocational rehabilitation counselor at the front end, the better, especially if it's on their form. The form here is the 1902W. And so that's a questionnaire. And you got to fill it out. Don't blow this form, because it's again, this is like the first thing. This is what they're going to look at to kind of gauge some of their questions. This is what they're going to look at and possibly overlook or not address if it's favorable to you and they want to deny you. And so this is going to help basically save your case on a higher level review, because it means basically if you do present information on here that is not developed and addressed by the vocational counselor in the decision or in the initial evaluation, that's where you're going to run into some problems. That's where you're, essentially going to be able to get it overturned, the adverse decision, or at least in theory, get it overturned. But you got to bring it up. If you didn't bring it up, it didn't happen, right? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. So if you say things verbally and you convey this verbally to the vocational rehabilitation counselor during your first appointment, and it's not written down and the vocational counselor doesn't write it down either, there are high odds, if you get denied, that you're going to have a harder time when you're appealing this than you otherwise would. So I just want to point out, super important. You got to do this. Okay. Got to do this. And so it's a really important, I can't stress it enough. Do a good job on the 1902W with special focus on how the service-connected disabilities affect you in the workplace. Also potentially at home, depending on what your issues are. You may want to present that as well. But what they're really focusing on is your service-connected disabilities and how they affect you at work, because they're trying to tie it in with what's called a vocational impairment. So very important to get this form right. And if you have questions, to also ask the VRC, I have questions about this, I don't understand, because the form does not come with comprehensive instructions. It should. I've complained to VRE about this, because it's one of the, if you look at the instructions for the other VR&E forms for the vocational rehabilitation counselors, the instructions are quite onerous and lengthy. But when you look at this form, the information for the veteran, the instructions are just non-existent. There's very minimal instruction, and it's not robust enough to really give a veteran a better understanding of what to do. And a lot of veterans don't think through whether to attach a written document to it to then better flush out the details of that form. So what you would do in that context, if you do have an additional form or additional document to attach to it, you would write on the top of the additional document, VA Form 28-1902W Addendum. And then you would put your name there and maybe the last four of your social in case it somehow gets misfiled in the electronic system. That way, everyone knows what this document is supposed to be attached to, what the information should have been, in that instance when the VRC does their initial evaluation. Okay. So what we're talking about here, for those that are joining right now, what we're talking about is how to prepare for the first appointment and any other appointment. So the first appointment is super important because that's a forensic exam. Again, it is a forensic exam. It is not an appointment with a counselor in the sense that most people think. It is a forensic exam where the vocational rehabilitation counselor's sole really purpose of the exam is not to be your buddy. They're not your buddy counselor, buddy counselor. No, that's not what they are. They're there to either prove or disprove whether you are entitled. And frequently, depending on your background, the counselor may have already reached their determination before they even started your appointment. And so for some of you, especially those with already having graduate training or already having an undergraduate training, it's super important to get this right. Super important to get this right. That doesn't mean you're going to win the first time around. What it does mean is if you do have to appeal, that the good evidence is already there so you can get a direct evidence or a direct decision or a higher level review, get it flipped because they had enough evidence in the file to do that. Otherwise, you may get it remanded for further development if there's a due process error. Then you can supplement the record and they have to address the new information. But anyway, we hopefully you won't get to that point because you're going to give them everything in advance to make sure that you move through the process as seamlessly as possible. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. We want your process when you apply to be as seamless as possible. So you're going to do a good job and you're going to fill out that form as succinctly as possible. Again, as succinctly as possible. Very important. You want to fill everything out. All your disabilities, how they affect you in the work. You may even want to include your non-service connected disabilities because that's important too, or it could be. Very important to get all that, done. Make sure you tell them what you think you want to do and write that out. Put that down. Again, the more stuff that is written out, the better. Most of the time. There's instances where you maybe want to approach it more ambiguously so that you let the counselor kind of figure it out for you and then they arrive at the conclusion. But that's a whole other conversation for a different day. So anyway, so that's how you start to get prepared. And we have a lot of resources on disabledveterans.org and in our Facebook group that are free that can help you pick through this process so it's not as confusing. That's what these videos are for. We have quite a few on my YouTube channel. So super important, okay? Super important. And so include non-service connected disabilities, include anything else. A vocational impairment may be other things. It may not be only service-connected disabilities or non-service-connected disabilities. If you get into where they have to address serious employment handicap, then they have to look at other things, like if you have a criminal record or if you have other, challenges that may be affecting your ability to gain and maintain suitable employment. And so one thing I want to cover here at this point is what is VR&E all about anyway? What is this, And I should probably start out each video this way because most of us come to each one of these videos and they've seen a bunch, but sometimes you come into this process where we're already kind of believing that you have some fundamental background of in relation to VR&E. So let's talk about what it is. So VR&E is a program at the Department of Veterans Affairs that always says to veterans, well, we're not an back-to-school program, we're an employment program, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, that isn't exactly accurate because 70% or so of veterans that come in to VR&E do get education to some degree or another, right? So you're kind of like, well, wait a minute. If most veterans get education when they come in, how is this not an education program? It's because it's more than an education program. And that's part of why I think they should change how they say that to veterans because I think it's kind of misleading. It's more than an education program. It is a vocational program that helps disabled veterans overcome the effects of their service-connected disabilities and vocational impairments so they can gain and maintain suitable employment. Again, suitable employment is the thing here. And suitable employment is defined as employment that is consistent with your aptitudes, abilities, and interests that doesn't aggravate your disabilities. Now, this kind of falls into abilities, right? So I don't know, it's almost redundant that they point that out. But anyway, so you have to get employment that's consistent with, not above, not below, but consistent with your aptitudes, abilities, and interests. Interest is something that, VA frequently likes to forget. And they like to then say, rather than an expressed statement about what you believe you're interested in, they like to kind of crystallize that as being, or classify that as being your pattern of interests. Well, that may not be the same. There could be a difference between your interests and your pattern of interests, but this is the thing that VR&E has read into the policies, not the regulations, that does sometimes stand in the way of certain veterans in certain instances, which are cases that I've worked on. Now, if you're coming to this again and you're checking in right now and you're like, who is this dude wearing a sweater in the wintertime? Who is he and what's he talking about? My name is Ben Krause. I used Veteran Readiness and Employment, formerly Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment, to become an attorney. So I went from having being a bad carpenter after getting out of the Air Force to now being an attorney. So here to here, soup to nuts, using mainly VR&E, but also a little bit of GI Bill to get to the point where I'm at. And VR&E ultimately paid for my undergrad law degree and a chunk of my law practice. So, but it didn't come without a fight and many appeals. And through that period of time, I also went from 10% my disability rating to 100% permanent total. And so that's a little bit about me and my background. So it took over a decade to get all that sorted out. And, God is good. It was worth it. And I then took that experience, and rather than going away and getting a super high paying job in a big white shoe law firm in Washington, D.C. or New York, have dedicated my career to helping veterans overcome the same hurdles that I had to deal with and become leaders in society, because I think that's important, and probably more important in my mind than working for Wall Street and helping some investment banker buy a bigger yacht. So to me, that's not as important, but that's just how I'm wired. So having said that, this is what I do. I have a significant amount of training in law, obviously, because I'm an attorney. So I went to school for that and went to University of Minnesota, which is a top 20 law school, and obviously passed the bar, because otherwise I wouldn't be an attorney, and regularly receive a significant amount of continuing legal education in veterans law and stay current on what's happening in this space. And so that's the background, and have helped investigate the Department of Veterans Affairs on the outside as a journalist before I became an attorney. And we've caught all kinds of different scandals. You wouldn't even believe the stuff that I've seen that I have not written about. But the stuff that we've written about is still significant. We've exposed the Department of Veterans Affairs using unqualified doctors to not properly diagnose veterans with traumatic brain injury for many years, wrongfully denying emergency room to non-VA facilities for veterans who otherwise should have been, approved for that, and a multitude of scandals over the years that have probably cost the VA billions of dollars to fix once we expose the shortcoming. But that's what I do, and that's my superpower. I guess if one were to have one, I guess that's mine. Is I can dig real deep and a lot deeper than most, and come through with the piece of evidence or the piece of information that helps break the bad wall down and build up good walls that protect veterans and that get us into good jobs and positions of leadership within society, which to me is fundamentally what I want to do. So that's what I do, and I'm good at it. So anyway, so that's the kind of gist about me and background for those that don't know who I am. And aside from that, if you do happen to get, denied benefits and you're like, man, I just don't know what to do. Now, you could go to Reddit. Odds are you're going to talk to somebody that's not a lawyer. You could go to, our Facebook group and at least get feedback from veterans that are in our group. There's over 40,000 of us in the group. You can also request a free case eval from my firm, and we do that it's a courtesy to veterans that have denials, and we'll take a look and see if we can give you feedback that can hopefully point you in the right direction. We don't represent all veterans that come to us. We're very selective in the cases that we do take, but we do give feedback when possible to veterans that come in with a decision and they have a genuine question, and do our best to help out in that way. Anyway, having said that, we're talking in this instance about how to prepare for your appointments with VR&E with special focus on the all-knowing first appointment. So now we've talked about the 1902W, which is the VR&E questionnaire that they're going to ask you to fill out. It's super important that you spend as much time as possible on it to fill it out to the best of your ability. Do not blow that off, because a lot of veterans do get denied because they skimp on the information on that form and they don't put down everything. And the agency then pretends like they somehow didn't know. A lot of times they do know because they have access to your health records. So some of you may not know that, but they do. And so, so if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, right? So, super important to get that done the right way the first time. Otherwise you have to go back and forth and get into a dance with them and appeal, and it's, possibly have to hire an attorney. And that's, not fun, but it is what it is. So now you're going into the appointment, right? You've done a great job filling out the 1902W. You sent it in. You sent it in on time. Again, on time. You want to make sure that when there's a deadline of any kind with VR&E, that you provide the information in a timely way. Very important. Super important, because they will close you out very quickly, and it could be to your detriment. You can reapply, but you may, be hurting a case that was good because you just didn't get around to it, or it wasn't important to you to fill out in time. So get it done in time. Treat this like a job, So anyway, you go into your first appointment. What do you do there? Okay, again, on disabledveterans.org, that's my website. And this is under my name here, if I can. Okay, bing, 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 bing. There we go. Boom. There. That's my website. So go there. There's information on VR&E. In our Facebook group that is linked below, there's information there as well about VR&E. So check it out. Try to get smart on it. YouTube has a lot of stuff. Reddit has a lot of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff. You just got to make sure that the author of the stuff that you're paying attention to has the credentials to give you good information to educate you properly about what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because if you get bad information, it could, obviously be to your detriment. So you go into this first meeting. What I would encourage most veterans to do is to come up with ideas about the type of career that you want to do, the type of training that it would take, and have that information assembled when you go in. That doesn't mean you're going to get approved for that, but it is a good way to at least start that process and to get it done. So I would encourage you to do that. Okay? Again, prepare. Read over some of the regulations that I'm about to tell you so that you can get smart on how your disabilities may be implicated, your service-connected disabilities and potentially non-service-connected disabilities may be implicated during the initial evaluation. The initial evaluation is a forensic exam. It is not a thing where you're there talking to your buddy counselor. It is a process where they're going to take information you convey verbally and in writing, and they're going to reduce it down to an initial evaluation report that is going to be on a form that is called a VA form, not a form 28-1902B, Counseling Record Narrative Report. And this is going to be used as evidence in whether they approve or deny you. In this document, they will be talking about whether you have a vocational impairment, whether the vocational impairment is substantially caused or linked to your service-connected disabilities, and whether you have overcome the effects of the vocational impairment through qualifying for or gaining and maintaining suitable employment. Those are going to be the internal criteria or the guts of whether you have an employment handicap. Veterans who have at least an employment handicap are usually found entitled to VR&E benefits and services. However, not always. If a veteran has an employment handicap, VR&E is obligated to evaluate them for a serious employment handicap. A serious employment handicap is essentially an employment handicap with one additional factor. The additional factor is the vocational impairment must be considered significant. But otherwise, that's really the difference. So significant. Okay, that's it. And what is, if it's not significant, what is it? It's not significant. Is it insignificant? Well, it may not be quite the same word, but it's, you got to think about that. Significant is generally meaning that it's perceptible in some way. That could be through objective testing and other stuff. But it's, I want to say about 70% of veterans are considered to have a significant vocational impairment. So just so you know, that's how that usually works out. But a lot of these veterans will have what is called a serious employment handicap, but not be aware. And the VRC will not tell them, oh, hey, by the way, if you have a serious employment handicap, I need to consider these other factors to see if we can get you into a higher level training. They frequently won't do that. This has been a big problem with VR&E. I've appealed this issue multiple times. They just don't like to address entitlement to higher level training in most offices. So they will fight you on it. So whatever that means, you could have higher level training if you're going to be an attorney, which might include an MBA or an LLM. You could have higher level training if you're going to be an MD. And that might include, an MPH or some other kind of additional training or some other kind of additional residency or, it just depends. A lot of different variables. So in computers, you could be entitled to higher level training and you're only getting an undergrad. Well, what about getting a higher level or grad degree as part of this? Because I have definite competitive disadvantage compared to non-disabled people, and the additional training will help me overcome at least some of that disadvantage. So it's pretty basic. Most veterans, again, qualify for that, but VR&E all across the country hates to adjudicate it that way. That information can be found on 38 CFR 21.72. So again, 38 CFR 21.72. If you want to read over the criteria for employment handicap and serious employment handicap, I'd encourage you to also Google 38 CFR 21.50 through 21.52. Very important. Take a look at this. Make sure you understand it before you go in for your first appointment. Make sure that you understand how your disabilities affect you before your first appointment. And make sure you're able to articulate this, meaning I would practice, if you have a friend or a spouse, practice on your friend or spouse explaining, and this may sound stupid, but seriously, like explaining in live time how your disabilities affect you. So that when the counselor asks you this question, it's not the first time you've answered this. Super important. It's in many ways no different than trying to get ready for a case study in a informational interview or something like that. It's all super important to do a review. Be ready to answer these questions because they're going to come at you. And if you have, again, a professional, and if you're a veteran like me with a PTSD rating or something like that, do your best to be professional. Try to just any kind of, trigger that you may have, and I know we all got them, just try to jam that trigger down as far as you can, no matter what, and bite your tongue as hard as you can to get through that appointment to the best of your ability. Make sure you're professional. So anyway, so when you go into that first meeting, you got to prepare. Okay. So let's assume now you are found to be entitled. Awesome. Next step is going to be evaluation and planning. So they're going to be doing the vocational exploration part to see what type of vocation is going to be appropriate for you. You should get a packet for this purpose. It's going to ask you for 3 to 5 jobs. Some offices are going to try to convince you incorrectly that you can only select jobs with a 10% or greater positive outlook or sunny outlook on hiring. That's not true. So be very cautious about what the VRC is telling you, because many offices have local policies and protocol that they're not supposed to have, where they are requesting veterans to provide or select careers that are maybe not aligned with the veteran's interests, but more aligned with whatever this sunny outlook kind of thing is that they're referring to, which is basically on ONET, which is a Department of Labor website. And so anyway, so be aware. You're going to get a form that says next steps. You're going to get a packet. They're going to ask you to fill it out. Labor market information. What do you do with that? You fill it out. You fill it out to the best of your ability. You get it back to the counselor as quickly as possible. Do not delay. Do not put it off until right before the deadline because it's a bad idea. You're going to end up with something that's either going to be incorrect or incomplete, or it's not going to be well thought out, even if it is complete. So do your best to take as much time as possible so that you can, fill out this document the right way. Then you're going to come in for another appointment. And in that appointment, you need to be able to present not only these careers, but also if the careers are things that are going to require additional training, what kind of additional training is going to be necessary to get you there. And it needs to be a type of training that you can reasonably complete, because not every veteran is going to be able to complete every kind of training. Not every veteran is going to have an aptitude to be a doctor or a lawyer or a psychologist or anything like that. Some are going to be excellent at other things like vocational trades and maybe working on HVAC or diesel mechanic and, doing things that nowadays a person can probably make as much, if not more, than an attorney doing if you're good at it, and good at marketing and whatnot. So having said all that, I want to make sure that you come out of this knowing the key thing. The key thing is to prepare for each meeting and make sure that well in advance of that meeting, you provided and completed any documentation that VR&E requested. I would say well in advance if you can, right? Sometimes they'll let you turn it in the night before the meeting, but I would discourage that process, So that goes to the other part of, me talking about any appointment. Do not show up to these appointments unprepared. Show up to the appointments, regardless of whether it's your very first appointment or whether it's your 31st appointment. Show up to the appointment prepared, ready to discuss the thing that you're ready to talk about, and don't rely on the VRC for anything. Don't think they're going to read anything. Don't think they're going to have time to go through copious amounts of emails before a meeting. So don't bog them down with 20 pages worth of junk, explaining why you want to do stuff, but taking 20 pages to explain it. Be as succinct as possible and be ready to explain it to the counselor in case they didn't review it before the meeting. And yes, I understand. You're a service-connected disabled veteran and you deserve X, Y, and Z. Yes, true. But I'm just telling you the reality here so that you don't get yourself duped out of benefits when you really could have prevented it yourself. So I get that a lot of people think, I'm entitled, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to VR&E, they just don't care because they're overworked and they're understaffed. So they'll do the best that they can to make sure that their performance reviews are as good as possible. But aside from that, do not count on the counselor to review your evidence or to be ready for your meetings. Take it on your shoulders to be ready for the meetings and to lead them through the information you think is relevant in case they didn't have a time to look at it. It'll definitely increase your odds of success in any meeting with your counselor, just making sure that you're in charge of your own destiny, okay? As kind of goofy as it sounds. Be the boss, although also be professional and don't boss around your counselor. That's bad. Don't do that because they'll get mad at you. But be prepared to take the reins and to walk them through professionally the information that you want them to think about when addressing the thing you're requesting. You're going to have a lot of these types of appointments throughout the time that you're in VR&E, and you're going to need that counselor to help you and come to bat for you on occasion. So just be ready. So you want to make sure that to the best of your ability, you maintain a solid relationship with the counselor, again, as best that you can. You don't want to poison the well, So anyway, having said that, I think we've kind of covered it, right? So at the end of the day, be prepared for the meetings. Don't go into the meetings without being prepared. Complete the assignments well in advance. If during the meeting the counselor has questions, do your best to answer those questions. And yes, the counselor can access your health records. Do not think that they won't, because they can. And the VA systems are fused, so they can see this stuff. Don't think they're not, and HIPAA this and that, and complain. No. They're going to look at everything they can look at, and let me tell you, they probably have access to more information than even I know about. So just be ready, okay? Think of yourself as like you're Mr. Open Book or Mrs. Open Book, and you're going to be in there, and you're going to be as transparent as possible. Now, if it comes to a question that you're either not comfortable answering or it's something that you don't know the answer to, there is nothing wrong with saying, I need to look into that further. Can I follow up with you by email? Nothing wrong with that, or follow up with you in a down the road. So I just really want to. Oh, somebody's asked, are you kidding? So I just thought this is funny. All right. I'm assuming this is a joke. How can you have a solid relationship with your VRC is not your or friend or buddy? So, who cares? They're not supposed to be your friend or buddy. So don't think that they are. Don't think that anybody that works at the VA is your friend or buddy either, because they're all documenting everything you do and say. So don't think that they're your pal. And you're better off, even if they are your pal, thinking they're not. Okay, it's just how you got to think about it. So they're not your friend or buddy. They're a vocational rehabilitation counselor. They're not a therapist, so they're not there to give therapy to you to make you feel better about your mom or dad, or anything like that, or your wife, or whatever the thing is. That's not their job. They're there to get you through training or to decide whether or not you even need it to begin with. And so they're there to look at you like you're a thing, not a human. They're looking at you like a thing. And not all of them are like this, but I feel like it's better to believe that they are, because then at least you won't be caught off guard. And if one happens to be fabulous, great, good, that's really good. But don't think that they will be, because then you won't be caught off guard, right? I would rather have you be surprised of a positive than surprised of a negative, It's just how it is. So having said that, I think that we've gone through any appointment thing. Just be ready. Answer things that you can easily answer. If you can't answer a question, don't. Ask for more time. Real simple stuff, in my opinion. But again, I'm an attorney and I've done this for 10 years. So, to me, it seems obvious nowadays. But let's see here. I'm going to answer some questions. If you're watching this and you have a question, definitely reach out. Love to give feedback where possible. And if you happen to have something on here where you don't want me to, if you're looking at asking a question and you don't want to, I have a law firm. And we look at denials, and we represent veterans in voc rehab cases. We're one of the only law firms in the country that regularly does this. So just feel free to reach out, and we'll at least give you feedback if possible. And if not, then obviously I can't guarantee I'm able to touch base with everything. But, we try, and, sometimes that's as good as you can do. So let's see here. First question, not sure if you covered this yet, but I work a part-time job as I go to school. Will this be an issue? So veterans are able to sometimes get approved for VR&E when they're working. Some of them are working full-time. So each case is different, though. So I just want to make sure that we know that that's the case. Let's see here. So just going through this. Okay, so somebody has a question about, so the clock has started last April, best time frame I've been given 3 to 5 years. So what is this about? Evidence submission. Yeah, if you're in a formal appeal process, those take forever. I avoid them like the plague now because the board is broken when it comes to timeliness of decision making. So I try to keep my cases at the now at the regional office because the board just takes forever, and there's no end in sight. I don't know why it's taking so long. So 4 to 7 years, they're saying now for a decision to come back. It's pathetic. So then somebody else, service. Yes. So non-service connected disabilities may matter. So important. Next question, will the VA pay for private universities? Yes, in some instances, but not all. So just be aware. I have a fair amount of clients that are approved for private universities, including what are considered Ivy League or top tier schools. And you can get approved there, but it's, you got to be, there's additional evidence that may be necessary if it's considered a high cost school. So best of luck. Okay. Maybe emphasize. Okay. So another, I didn't do a good job with the 1900. Still, I was granted EH, but I believe I am SEH. I am 100% PNT, and I believe I fit the criteria. When I reapply, okay, and do a better job. Would the next time I have to apply hinder me getting... I don't have an ability to answer this. So unfortunately, I mean, it could, because it's evidence and it's in the record. So any disconfirming or evidence that's contradictory, yeah, it can be used against you. Let's see here. So I want a job in medical field that won't aggravate carpal tunnel. Okay, you're a genuine person. I am real. It is true. Let's see here. Ben is about the guide. I was accepted biology degree plan. PA was not added. Okay. VRC said that once I had an admission, he or she would extension add it to the plan. Yeah. I mean, you want to put the request in writing. Don't rely on verbal communications, because frequently the verbal communications will not get reduced to writing by the VRC. And a lot of times what we see for the additional schooling is that, they'll say, well, we'll add it after you prove you can do well by graduating, and then we'll add it. Well, what they usually then do is they say, well, no, you're qualified for suitable employment. See you later. And then they don't do it. So I tend to think that the second you realize that to make your plan work, it would require additional training and changing your vocational goal, to put it in writing, put in the request, and then ride the lightning. Because at that point, that's what you're going to be doing, depending on the counselor. So, but you got to document it, if nothing else. Must be documented if you're going to end up appealing later if you get denied. So I'm going to start Academy for Art, Communication, Unitech, Copious Cat, all right, and eventually law school. How do I communicate that my undergrad is for, and then open a practice? I mean, well, you just kind of said it, right? Even in what you typed out. So you said what you want to do, but that you want to be a lawyer and then open a practice. I mean, you basically use rationale and you write out what your plan is and why it makes sense. You have to have an undergrad to go to law school, but you can get an undergrad in pretty much anything. And as long as you do well on the LSAT, you can go to law school. But I would say that you definitely want to apply before you graduate if you know that you want to use VR&E. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't apply to just see what they say right away. So I wouldn't delay on that type of stuff, except for certain unique circumstances. Another veteran writes, first time applied and go to the job. I think I just saw this. I don't know why. Anyway, I was also terminated for supposedly not responding to the counselor. Could have appealed, but it was quicker to reapply again. Ended up being found eligible. Great. SEH. Don't appeal. Didn't appeal, but wrote a letter to Congressman. VRC is no longer a VRC. Yeah. Well, they're adjudicators, kind of like insurance. We did this one already. Let's see here. Told them I'm forced to travel. Yeah, I mean, traveling is it's kind of hard to say on that one. Some travel might be covered, but not all. How can we have a solid relationship? That's true. Hey, thank you. Who is the boss or the supervisor for VRC? So each office has, or most offices anyway, have what's called a Veteran Readiness and Employment Officer. That's kind of considered the division chief. So they're in charge of VR&E. But then above them is the director and all their staff. And so depending on the office, you could be having a decision that might be denied where it's approved by the VRE officer or the VRC, but ultimately the director looks at it and they kick it out for whatever reason. That it won't be documented, so that's makes the appeal process kind of confusing. But anyway, I hope that helps. accepted in multiple law schools. Will they try to convince me to? I mean, they might try to convince you to use the GI Bill, but I don't know. Hard to say without a crystal ball, my friend. What's the recourse for being approved for a program that a local agent requires a doctor note? Well, I mean, here's the thing. You got to cooperate with VR&E. It's part of the regulations. And so if they request a doctor note, you better go get one. Okay. Don't think that because you don't think it's relevant that you're going to trump whatever the VRC says. The VRC is considered a vocational expert. And so if they feel it's necessary, even if it's truly BS, I would still do your best to comply just because non-compliance will get you kicked out. See, here you go. The rest of the message. Then being closed out for non-compliance. Yes, that's what happens. If you don't comply, they'll kick you out. And then if you go to the board will affirm the denial because they'll say, well, you didn't cooperate. You deserved it. What happened if you did not get a job after you completed a program? Well, then if you prove that you were unable to gain and maintain suitable employment, and you tried, then you should be able to potentially get additional training or some other kind of support from VR&E to make that work. So anyway, all right. So God bless. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and look forward to future sessions like this. I hope this is useful. If you have any questions or comments and you want to direct it to me, the best place to get a hold of me is at the law firm, and whatnot. So I hope that helps. And otherwise, yeah, we got another emails are coming in, but I just have to shut it down now. We're coming up on the end. So I will talk soon. And if you have questions, again, reach out to me, reach out to the group. Facebook group is free. Jump in there if you want to. You can reach out to me. We do free case evals for veterans that are denied benefits. And that's a free thing we do. So reach out if you want to. Take care. Bye for now.